Hi guys. So yeah, as Ian said, today I'll be talking about, there's probably 100 different titles I could have given this presentation, but ultimately we'll be talking about audience insights and essentially everything that we've been talking about today, whether that's what Justus has been talking about or the attribution side of things, the outputs of that, including the stuff that Paul's been through as well. How do you turn that into something that you're actually going to do with your advertising budget, and how do you, how do you improve what you're doing? How do you, add value to what you're doing and, get a bit of money back off the money that you spend on something like GA360? So, given that it's a Google event, I thought I'd introduce myself in the most googly way possible. So, I don't usually wear caps. I just thought it'd look quite cool if I did. But yeah, so I'm aged 25 to 34. Obviously male. I'm not a parent yet, but as Ian said, I head up the Programmatic department. So that spans everything from programmatic display to paid social, video advertising, but with a bit of a PPC background and work very closely with the likes of Angus and Paul, I can see the sort of benefits of how all this attribution can sort of work together and really improve your marketing plans. And in terms of my interests, pets, food, football, travel, and I'm in market for another dog and a pair of trainers, so I will apologise in advance. There are a few dog references throughout, but yeah, I thought it would, help with a bit of a theme. But before I go on, I'm not going to ask you any sort of questions off the back of this, but it would be useful to sort of see a show of hands who's currently using analytics, or rather, is anyone using something other than analytics in the room? Google Analytics specifically? Is anyone using sort of Adobe or another version? No? Okay, that's fine. And has anyone either previously or currently used sort of display advertising as well as PPC? Yeah? Few nods, few hands, quite a few hands, brilliant. So given that that's sort of my area, I will have quite a few sort of examples of how we can use that. And finally, does anyone have sort of physical stores as well as online stores as well? Great, okay, a few nods, a few hands, brilliant. So yeah, I suppose ultimately what I'll talk about today is, how can 360 fit into this, but ultimately I'll be talking about how it can actually fit in with sort of some of the tools you'll be using on a daily basis, as well as some of the more advanced tools you'll get with the suite as a whole. So AdWords, Optimize 360, DoubleClick, and I will be touching on Facebook towards the end. It's sort of a bit of a dirty topic in a Google sort of presentation, but I will show you some examples of how you can use that. And I suppose in terms of what we'll cover, I'll talk about why audiences are important, when you can use them, what you're supposed to use them for, and I suppose how else can you use them, sort of give you that sort of competitive advantage against other people within your field. The first thing is why is it important, and you'll probably wonder why I put this picture up now. But my point with this is that you, at first glance, it's quite hard to see there what's a dog, what's a bagel, and to be honest, that's no different to the adverts you're putting out, whether it's TV, whether it's display, whether it's PPC. You've got a split second to sort of make a connection with one of your users, with one of your customers, and I suppose in order to do that, you need to make sure that what you're saying and what you're showing and what you're doing with them is the right thing to say and at the right time. And ultimately, especially through programmatic, it's about having the right message at the right time with the right person, and definitely using a tool like GA360, you can do that with ease, I'd say, and really improve upon what you're already doing. So in terms of why they're important, I always have sort of three things that I speak to clients about when we talk about why audiences are important and what they can do for you. It's quite a broad topic and quite a broad thing to think about, but ultimately it's about efficiency, and there may be things you're doing at the moment that you're completely unaware of, that not necessarily money down the drain, but better ways of doing things, more efficient ways of doing things, and sort of shortcuts, if you like, and things to sort of boost what you're doing already. So it's not to say that you're inefficient at the moment, but there's always steps you can take to improve what you're doing. A key thing with any business, I'd imagine, people want to grow, so there will become a point where you sort of are looking for other ideas, looking for other things you can do with your analytics tools or with your sort of marketing tools in general. Quite often people are a bit afraid to step outside the box of PPC when you start to see sort of smaller returns. And as I said, this is how it fits in with the likes of Angus's presentation, where you can really see the true value of how everything works and tailor everything after that based on those facts. And Yeah, the experience is the key thing. So just as mentioned earlier, we're sort of living in a world now where the internet is powered by ads. People are becoming annoyed with ads. People don't like to see them, and the reason why is usually because they're either irrelevant or intrusive or just not right for them. So by using audiences throughout everything you do, and certainly in terms of activation, it really should just provide a much better experience for your users. So moving on to sort of when we use audiences, a few similar slides to this today, but there's so many things you know about your business, especially if you own your business. There's a tendency to try and use everything at the same time and do as much as you can and use your data. There's a lot of sort of terms like big data, and I mean we've been talking about the importance of data all day, so I'm not going to say it's not important, but the key thing is to know what to use and when. You don't have to use everything. The idea is that you should use everything to meet a business goal you've got. You'll all have goals, I'm sure, internally, whether it's growth, whether it's new customers, or whether it's increasing the frequency of certain customers. Knowing what those goals are and knowing which bits of data tie up with that, and also which audiences and how they act and what they do. It's important to pick the right ones and not try and pick everything, because if you pick everything, you'll struggle to make any sense out of what you do, and really it's a case of growing from the ground up and choosing the most, I suppose, lucrative data you've got really to really sort of improve what you're doing over time. In terms of what the options are, so as I said, when creating audiences with something like Analytics 360, you've got quite a few options in terms of how you can use this audience and use it to power something else. So AdWords is obviously a clear option there. I'd imagine the vast majority of people in the room will be doing PPC to some extent. If not, then display within AdWords as well. Some of you may not have experimented with Optimize 360, but I probably can't stress enough how cool some of the stuff is that you can do with it, and actually the real value that you can sort of drive, and things you can do with your website that before you probably didn't even think you had skill sets to do. This makes you very easy to do. And yeah, I'll show you some examples in a moment with a sort of a fictitious website I've sort of used as an example. And finally, DoubleClick. So obviously GA360 is I suppose an enterprise solution, and DoubleClick is very much an enterprise display solution, so it's something we use internally, but there's a lot of things you can do in terms of the delivery of your ads, in terms of whether it's video or YouTube or display. There's a lot of integrations with GA360 that really, I suppose, reveal the value of that as a channel as a whole. There's a lot about display in the news in general around whether sort of how transparent people are when they're delivering it, whether you're showing in the right places, are you showing the right thing, how often are people showing to people. If people are using, or if you're using DoubleClick or you're using an agency that uses DoubleClick, having that integrated directly into analytics just opens up a whole new world of data that you've probably never even seen before. So yeah, I think all three of those are very important. As I said, there are, I suppose, loose integrations with what you can do from Facebook and other social media and any source really that you're using across all of your sort of marketing plan. But the first thing I'll talk about is this website here. So as I said, it is a made-up website, so despite how good it looks, you won't be able to buy any dog leads or collars afterwards. But essentially they have online, offline stores. They sell accessories, and they've recently made the move from GA to GA360. So they are looking to take advantage of the tool. Some of you may be in this position at the moment. You might already have 360, but I'll take you through a few examples of how you can use the data and use the audiences to power what you can do going forward. So I said earlier, in terms of data and audiences you have, you don't have to pick everything. And again, it's best to line it up with sort of business goals. So the first goal, which I'd imagine is the same for most businesses, is to really expand on new customers. So if you're doing something like display remarketing or you're doing PPC, you really want to focus your efforts on finding more people, not speaking to the same people over and over again. But equally, as with any business, in order for it to survive, you need to increase the frequency of purchasing. You need that business to carry on, essentially. So the second goal for them is frequency of purchase, and to get people involved in the brand, to develop that level of loyalty, and over time create a relationship really with the people that are shopping. And like I said earlier, in terms of experience, with all of these, you need to give people different experiences. To give someone the same website, whether they're a new customer or someone that's bought a few times, or actually someone that's been buying from you for years, it may work now, but actually making subtle changes based on who they are and what they do can pay dividends in the long run in terms of improving the performance of your site. So the last one is increasing the lifetime value of the customer. So we want to sort of create audiences and sort of do things off the back of that to really understand via attribution and through analytics how valuable they are. But actually, if we find out they are really valuable, you want to do something about that. You don't want to sit on it. So like I said, I'll go through some examples now about how you can use this data, how you might collect it, and how you can push it to these various platforms to really sort of achieve these goals. So the first one is finding new customers, and typically the sort of standard process you might go through is look at who is already a customer, and you might have heard of things like lookalikes and things like that within certain platforms, but that's the logical thing to do, to sort of look at who your customer is and what are they doing, what are their interests, how are they behaving, are they all on mobile, are they on desktops, how are they switching between platforms, and how are they making their way to buying something. And these are all things that you'll learn through the analytics platform, and by doing things that Angus and Paul have talked about, really understanding who they are, what they do, and what their defining attributes are. So there may be sort of people, like we said earlier, these custom segments, people that are dormant, people that are sort of in the honeymoon period of having sort of purchased a few times within the first few months, and really understanding them and what they do is really important for what you do afterwards. So the first example I've got here is tying together offline and online data. There's no reason why you can't do this separately. So offline customers obviously may behave completely different to online customers, but in this example, we want to take all the data from everyone that's bought from these stores and also all the data for everyone that's bought online to get a holistic view of everyone that's bought. I don't know how many of you have used things like affinity categories within AdWords and within display platforms, but essentially these are sort of categorizations that describe who people are, and based on the things they interact with and the things that they engage with, it gives you a rough idea of who they are. And they are designed for reach, so they're not hugely specific, but at least they are some form of defining sort of attribute, and it is fully aligned with people that have bought from your store. So in this case, unsurprisingly, it's dog lovers and pet lovers, followed by a few others, but ultimately, when we looked at the converters, we can understand that actually, if and when a brand new person searches for us or is browsing online, we want to speak to them slightly differently. And we might actually think, we might want to provide them with an incentive to come through. We may be a bit more informative in the sort of approach you have. You don't want to be too aggressive. And again, it's trying to tailor that experience so it doesn't become that annoying environment that people quite often sort of associate with ads. So in the first instance, it's very simple to do this. So within Analytics and Analytics 360, you can define audiences. So after you've put your data in, whether you're doing this using the sort of UTM parameters, so things like sources and mediums, or whether you're using custom segments, or whether it's just using these audiences you've already uploaded, it's a matter of 2 or 3 clicks to push that to these platforms. So the first one would be to AdWords. So at the point at which someone searched for, let's say, dog food, they come through and they're greeted with a completely different PPC ad to people that have already been on the site. So it's almost a reversal of RLSA and remarketing, in that you're trying a little bit harder to get people over the line. So in this case, we're offering a sort of 25% discount with a promo code, or equally you could offer a sort of a free product. And there's no reason why you need to incentivize someone with a free product or a discount that might be irrelevant for your business, but tailoring it so it's, again, more informative. It gives them a much better idea of who they are, but really recognising that they're a bit further down that funnel that Justus was talking about, and treating them differently. Equally, as I'll go through, you'll see that people have already bought from your website. You would completely change the ad copy, as well as the way that the site looks, and also some of the display creative you might use further down the line. The next example is display. So new customers, not everyone is going to look for you. To be honest, a lot of the time I speak to clients where they've maxed out on their sort of brand PPC. They're not finding that generic PPC is particularly effective, and PPC ultimately is demand driven. You're relying on people looking for you, and it's up to you how much of a premium you want to pay for that. But really, if we can understand, and you can use far more things than just the affinity categories, but if we can understand all those different things from that data circle that I had earlier in terms of the age, the gender of a typical converter, the way that they work in terms of device, as well as the affinity categories, there's no limit to how you can refine these and overlay all these different categories. So it may be that you end up with a really, really tiny audience, but that's where you'll see the most efficient results. So in this case, again, at the point at which we know that someone's browsing relevant content, they might be sort of male between 25 and 34 with an interest in pets and food, like myself. It's completely logical to then sort of start showing ads along the way. And I'll talk in a little bit around how that integrates with attribution, but now with GA360, you'll get a really good idea of how this fits into the whole journey. Actually, if you're generating new customers, is this the thing that's then starting that customer journey? And if it is, then you know that you can invest in that area. And equally, I suppose, from an attribution point of view, if it's not, then you'll soon find out and you know to adjust your approach. Again, in terms of how things can work from an optimized point of view, so if you're lucky enough that one of those two things works, if you can get people through to your site via AdWords or any other source really, understanding exactly how they came through, and as Paul said, as soon as you get a new customer come through and you can recognize them as a new customer, whether it's having an overlay on your site or just, I suppose, just tailoring the messaging or the content on the site, you can use Optimize 360 to do this. So it's relatively simple. Again, it's something that perhaps sort of designers in-house or marketing professionals, people that are fairly savvy with the sort of Google interfaces will be able to do for you. And essentially being able to tie up either A, your ad messaging with the stuff that's on site, or B, just being able to just adjust that experience slightly. And it doesn't need to be huge changes. We're not talking about completely adjusting the whole site in the way that the whole process works, although you could probably do that. It's just about making that experience a little bit better for someone that's brand new. And everything within GA360 can feed into this. So if you find that certain pages have high bounce rates or that certain new sessions are constantly dropping out at certain areas, maybe taking them a bit further than that within their first visit, or showing them stuff that will mitigate any problems they might face further down the line is an example of something you can do. And with Optimize 360, again, you can A/B test certain ideas. So if you've got two completely ideas, whether it's adjusting the content on the homepage or having something like that, where you've got an overlay or a certain offer, then you can A/B test and have these segments. And actually, I suppose the key thing from here is being able to push that back into your other platforms. So the example here is either 25% off or a free brush. Understanding what those two offers are, and then going forward, constantly having the same messaging is really important. You don't want to be delivering sort of different messaging and inconsistencies in terms of your communication with people. So if you're separating people into sort of different user pools and you've got different ideas of certain things that can work, the sort of scientific approach would be to constantly keep them separate. And using Optimize 360, you can do that. You can keep them completely separate and continue to speak to people in the same way. And again, it all comes back to that experience piece, in that you want to make sure that someone has a seamless, sort of logical and consistent experience from the point at which they either look for you or you've shown an ad to you to the point at which they actually end up purchasing. So the second goal is around sort of frequency of purchase. So as I said before, a typical business would obviously want people to keep buying from them. It may be that actually you're the kind of business that only needs someone to buy from them once, so in which case this might not be as relevant, but it's always useful to understand what does drive people to buy more. So a typical sort of logical step to doing this would be to look at your customer and I suppose re-engage with them through any means possible, whether that's online, offline, or through other channels away from the Google stack. And I suppose just looking at your customer or a converted customer is not enough really. So when you've got this huge tool at your disposal with Analytics 360, there's no reason why you can't drill down further. So not just looking at a converter, it's quite a general audience in general. So being able to understand actually a converter of a certain age, understanding how that works by channel. So someone that reacts to display ads is someone that's very different to someone that reacts to PPC ads. I think given that I work in this industry, I tend to never click on one, which is probably not the best thing to say when that's what I do for a living, but I think it's just testament to the fact that everyone behaves differently. Some people find them annoying, some people find them helpful, and understanding actually how customers work by channel is really important. So yeah, again, using my example, if we're going through someone for this specific site, we find that the most popular converter is someone that's aged 18 to 24, female. Again, they've got an idea of people that they have got an interest of sort of pets, animals, and dogs. And you can layer over more conditions on top of this. So I suppose I would never be afraid of being too specific. It's much better to be as refined as possible and building up from there, especially if you're doing something like display where there's a lot of risk because you've got, I suppose there's no limit to how many people can show there. So my advice would be to build very specific lists and constantly test. But again, in this example, it's people that have bought more than once in general. So since they've been on the site, they've bought more than once. They haven't been on the site for the last 7 days, but we know that they've had 3 sessions within the last 7 days. So we can tell they're looking. They might be on the cusp of buying something, but they're not quite there yet. So taking this audience again, it might be that they have to wait for payday, or that there's something stopping them, or that they're maybe even considering a competitor. It might be that something like Pets at Home are offering free delivery. So understanding where you are in comparison to competitors and perhaps where you're losing out, and being able to offer something conditionally that might tip them over the line can be really useful. So again, in this example, because we know they've been on the site 3 times and they've bought something and sort of aren't currently interested and they haven't been on the site again, we know we need to be proactive and go out there and speak to them. So in using something like display, it's a very specific audience, but I suppose it's a much more advanced version of sort of dynamic remarketing or remarketing, where you can overlay far more conditions than have they been on the site, yes or no, how many pages have they seen. So I suppose it's just a much more advanced version of that. And like I said, in this case, it's useful that you can be proactive. You're not relying upon people to speak to you within paid search. But again, that is an option. If you know that people have then searched for a generic term or a term that you think is relevant to your site, there's no reason why you can't adjust your approach to reflect that as well. So the next way in which you can do it, as I said, use an optimized 360 is it's not just about chasing people with ads and showing people the right ads. Again, if you are lucky enough that you can get someone onto your site to make them feel welcome, I suppose, there's no reason why you couldn't just adjust some minor things on your site to make people feel like they're back. I know I've been on this site before, I know where to go. Moving something like the search bar down from the top right, so people have been on there before, they know what products you sell, they've got an idea of what they already want to buy. Make it easy for them, make it an environment that's suitable for them. Don't make them sort of trawl through the same thing that a brand new customer or another customer wants. Making that experience easy for you. You may have seen this sort of thing on the likes of Amazon, or even on things like Asda and Argos, where they'll show you products you've already seen. And a lot of people are already doing this, and I think that it's not that hard. It's something that, especially with this tool, can be made very easy. So it's, again, something I'd thoroughly recommend, and you'll be surprised at how much of a difference small changes can make, especially for people that especially for people that have already bought from you before. Very small changes can make a very big difference in the long term. And I suppose it's important to highlight at this point, going through each of these goals, reporting is a huge part of this. So yeah, this is just an output and an action that you take off the back of everything that you're doing within your attribution model. Obviously, your attribution model will inform you of actually whether you should be doing more of your on-site content or whether you should be doing more display or more PPC. And the last one is around increasing the lifetime value. So this is quite a difficult one, and it's one that I think a lot of businesses might struggle with in terms of A, understanding what is the lifetime value, but B, now that you've understood it, what on earth do you do with the data? So again, a very similar sort of process, understanding your key customers. So it really is a much deeper version of sort of building frequency of purchase. It's developing a bit of a relationship with your customers and really understanding what makes them tick. And really sort of going that one step further to sort of personalizing your approach and really, I suppose, engaging by any means possible. So this is where things like the custom dimensions and custom segments that Paul was talking about come in very handy in terms of going just beyond some of the standard things like age and demographic. You can really understand, based on your data and the stuff that people have previously done to engage in your site, how you can go one step further and really improve what you're doing. So, example here is a customer who every 2 months we know spends sort of between £100 and £200 on dog accessories and food and things like that. We also know from the products that she buys that she might actually have more than one need when she comes to the site. It's not just buying one thing for one dog. Essentially, we know she has a big dog and a small dog, and that she is a high value customer to us. Someone that spends that much money for and that often on the site is someone that we really value and actually want to remain in touch with, whether that's selling to them or whether that's providing them with sort of blog content, relevant content that's suitable for them. It's up to you and it's up to your customer. I can't tell you what to do because every business is different, but understanding who that customer is and knowing all these things through the tool is hugely important to how you can make differences going forward. So again, with this example, for someone that we know is a high value customer and someone that's engaged, when we know that they come to the site, if we know the products that they buy, we can make changes to the site to adjust for them. So whether that's sort of inserting products that they commonly buy, or whether that's including a search bar for them to look for the products, making that journey as simple and easy as possible is vital to improving what you're doing. And this isn't just relevant to retail. The retail example I've given is probably the easiest one to do, really. But whether you're sort of a price comparison site or whether you're a B2B business, I'm sure there'll be things within your site and certain things that people engage with more so than others that you can change on your site to adjust your approach for you. And you can do this conditionally, so there's no reason why you need to do that all month. So again, we mentioned before that we know that they buy every 2 months around payday. Certain retail things have big sort of trends around payday, and it makes sense that actually off the back of that we sort of know that, and we can go out and speak to people and treat them completely differently. The alternative to that is, I suppose, a customer that we know is really high value and buys every sort of 2 months. But they haven't returned, so they're what Paul described as like a dormant customer, someone that has previously had a bit of a relationship with you. They've bought quite a lot. We know that they've got 2 dogs, but they haven't come back on the site. They haven't come to see you for quite a while, and you can, based on the way that you build the audiences and the segments, once you've built these segments, this is all automated. So like Justus said, it sounds quite labour intensive, but this can be done automatically essentially. And at the point at which you've got a dormant customer that isn't coming to your website, that's when you would probably look to things like potentially either things like Facebook or display advertising, where if you know they're actually shopping around, and you'll know from the sort of pages that people are going to or sort of coming to your website from within your referrals, that if they're shopping around competitor sites or looking on other sites for certain products, then you want to interrupt that process. And again, it's about creating a good experience, but to some extent you need to do what you can to bring people back. If you've got a dormant customer, there's almost nothing to lose. So in this example, again, if you know that people are actually looking for very specific products, pulling that from within a product feed or whatever you want within the creative, so long as you're happy that the creative is compelling enough to bring them back, understanding who that person is and that they're sort of dormant allows you to sort of make the decisions off the back of it. So measuring it is one thing, but the actions you take off the back of it are probably equally as important. So the last section is how else you can learn more. And these are, I suppose, some ad hoc examples of how you can use certain things and some tools within the platform that can actually inform how you build audiences. But the first thing I want to talk about, specifically display, actually, is the fact that the sort of industry average for a click-through rate, according to Google at the moment, is anywhere between 0.05% and 0.1%, and that is really low. And I think programmatic and display has a bit of a stigma for not generating a lot of traffic. Certainly, sort of view-through traffic and view-through conversions are often deemed sometimes worthless in some cases, especially when using that last-click model. And the main thing that 360 can do, certainly if you're using display, is sort of reveal the benefits of every channel. So here you can segment view-through and click-through audiences that come through to your site. So we know from the traffic that's come through that actually people that look at an ad and then go through to your site, look at more pages per session. They spend far more time, almost 5 times as much time on your site, a much higher, a lower bounce rate. You can segment these users, and actually, if you really want, there's arguments to say that people accidentally click on display ads and things like that. And if you really wanted to, you can segment these users and speak to view-through customers in a very different way to people that have clicked on your ad. So if you're of that mindset and you honestly believe that some of the clicks on your ads either aren't worth anything, or that you feel that people are actually paying attention to your ads but going via another avenue, you can treat these people entirely separately. And that's important when optimizing your site. If you know that someone is sort of opposed to clicking on ads or opposed on clicking on banners to get somewhere, then actually adjusting the way that your site looks can be quite important, and actually be the difference between someone leaving the site and making their way through to purchase. The other thing, I suppose, is understanding what else your customer is doing. So specifically through display again, and this goes the same for things like referrals as well, but understanding which sites people are coming from when they're seeing your ad, and whether they're clicking on it and seeing it, can actually give you a lot of insight, either A, into competitors, or B, into environments that you want to be in. So something like property, or within the financial market, you may find that people that are coming to your site are quite often constantly coming through from a competitor, where if a competitor actually has ad space on their site and they're going straight through to you, it might be that you want to adjust your creative to be completely relevant to the competitor you're showing on, that you can be that specific. And again, the difference you can make by being that specific can be huge. And just because this is happening within display, there's no reason why you couldn't create these sort of audiences and push it to the other areas. So an eBay user, someone that likes that interface, is probably very different to someone that likes Daily Mail. So someone coming from a Daily Mail or from The Guardian or a very content-based site actually might prefer to see a site that's got a lot of content, got a lot of information about you as a business, whereas someone from eBay probably just wants to search for what they want and buy it relatively quickly. So there's a lot of insight you can take off the back of where your audience has been, and adjust everything going forward off the back of that. One of the last slides is around Facebook. So again, it's a bit of an elephant in the room, and I think I'll be quite honest in saying that there's always going to be differences in the way that you measure things through Facebook and the way that you measure things through GA. They are completely separate entities, and there's pros and cons of using both. But one way in which you can use Facebook, actually, if you find that you are a business that relies quite heavily upon Facebook and you've struggled with other channels because you find that the data that Facebook provides is really rich, it's self-declared, then actually there's things you can do to tie up Facebook with the rest of your site or with advertising going forward. So a key one might be fans of your page. So through display, through PPC, it is near impossible to understand whether someone is a fan of your page. But if you're getting a lot of traffic from adverts that you're doing via Facebook and you tag them appropriately as people that are fans of your page, creating audiences off the back of that and engaging with them differently through the likes of PPC, through display, or just the content on your site can make massive changes. And that's, like I said, there's a lot of data sources within Facebook that aren't available within Google, and vice versa. And I suppose it's playing to your strengths, and if and where possible is absolutely trying to integrate everything you can do and never underestimate the value of one channel against another. So really what I'm trying to say is, based off the sort of information Angus went through in terms of attribution and the stuff that Paul went through in terms of segments, audience is really the thing that ties it all together, and it's up to you what you do with it afterwards. Measuring it, like I said before, is one thing, but making changes off the back of it is where you'll see the real differences in what you do and where you'll see the value come from it. The most important thing is, as Angus said, is to optimize and just constantly test and repeat that, which sort of brings me back to my last slide, which is, if you do this properly and you test constantly and you work with this, then you'll see efficiencies within your business. You will see your business grow, and ultimately you'll hopefully provide your customers with a much better experience as well. So was there any questions at all?